The Weapon X story contains numerous suggestive elements that charge the story with a more intensely disturbing undercurrent, the metaphor of sexual abuse. The story begins with Logan being abducted, much like a trafficking victim. He's taken to a lab where he is penetrated with tubes. You can see one entering his mouth, and one that appears to enter his behind, and there are mentions in dialogue of holes being plugged. These tubes are in part responsible for pumping adamantium into his body, and although we don't see it directly in the story, adamantium is presumably a silvery white fluid that is sticky enough to adhere to his bones. A really powerful part of the Wolverine story is the fact that the adamantium is permanently bonded to his skeleton, in a symbol of the Weapon X trauma always being with him. Real-life survivors of violating traumas may describe feeling like the perpetrator is still touching them, like they can still feel the perpetrator and like the trauma is still happening even now. So having the adamantium literally stuck in Logan's body elicits the same idea. When Logan first wakes up, and later when he's placed outside, he is completely frozen, which is a common response to violating traumas, where the body dissociates and enters an almost catatonic freeze response. They even mentioned that despite the dangerous conditions outside, his adrenal glands are not activating, showing how the collapse response is very much a deep and physiological failsafe. But I do think this response is common for any sort of violating trauma, not just sexual abuse in particular. A large aspect of the story's sexual abuse metaphor is that in real life, we consider that form of abuse as more related to power and control than anything else. In the story, this is literalized by the purpose of the experiment being about mind-controlling Logan to use him as a weapon. Next, we have two mentions of bodily fluids, one very explicit one here, and the other being when Cornelius tells the professor to spit on Logan. Logan's abuse is filmed, which is sometimes the case in real-life cases of abuse as well, especially ones that are sexual in nature. Here we have use of the phrase cut and thrust, which is a real phrase, along with a joke about a tiger being violated. Is Logan a parallel for the tiger? Logan describes the whole experience as the experimenters getting into his body. He then describes feeling chased by a dark figure that breathes into him, and says he sucks its hot breath, and says he can't go on, gristle shot, every thrust. I also think it's possible to read Wolverine's claws as an extension of this sexual abuse metaphor, specifically as a symbol of male arousal after trauma, which can be painful and uncomfortable. The claws come out bloodily and seemingly painfully, and notice the sounds used to describe them. Puck, spuck, cuck, skuck, and fock, quite similar to certain other suggestive words. While I don't think Barry Windsor-Smith intended for the story to be about sexual abuse necessarily, I found these elements to stand out and give the story an even more sinister underbelly, which might explain why it's as powerful as it is.